Hello and welcome to another special episode of Gotham Outsiders. I am your host, Bad Obsessive Chris, and with me as always is my co-host TJ.
Hello everyone, and as always, we have a very special guest with us today.
Yes, creator of Circuit Breaker, Julien Jourdain, DC's first major trans-mass superhero, doing amazing covers featuring queer superheroes like Jon Kent Superman, Harley Quinn and Dreamer, and etc., and has a story in the upcoming DC Pride 2023 anthology, who has also worked on such things as Ma, Stuff of Nightmares with R.L. Stine. Like, we could be here forever listing all of the amazing things that our guest has done. Welcome, everyone, A.L. Kaplan.
Guys, thank you for having me. I was listening to some older episodes and looking through your guest list. So I was a little intimidated. I'm glad I didn't look at that before. Oh my god! Thank you for having me.
Oh, please, we're excited.
Yeah, we were so excited when you agreed to be here. And Alan, I'm gonna call you Alan, okay? I feel like we're on that level.
Go for it.
Yeah, we were so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna write him and see what happens. Like, I don't know. It's always like these people are they're so big in my mind. And then, you show up here and I'm like, oh my God, he's like a person and he's so lovely.
I know. I'm so excited. I can't say enough how much Julien means to me. Oh my God, I'm excited.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. And I love your art so much.
Yes.
I guess we will start with an icebreaker question.
Mm-hmm.
Who, in your opinion, is the best Bat detective in the DC universe, or just like the best detective in general, if you have an argument for someone who isn't in the Bat family?
So I'll start this off that way, being contrarian. Not a Bat, but I think Barry Allen is probably the best investigator, but he's a CSI, forensic investigator, super cop, whatever the heck you want to call him, genius level intellect, studying this stuff. He discovered or created some new chemical element, right? Solved crimes, multidimensional level. And he has flash powers, so his experience of the world is transcends space and time, basically. So theoretically, he could be the world's best detective. But unlike Bruce Wayne, who has the leisure of the rich sort of hyper focus, where he can just be I'm devoting my entire life to this one thing. Barry Allen he's just kind of all over the place. It's with that backstory, he gotta have a limitation for a story.
So real.
Yeah.
And so I think in terms of I don't know, Flashpoint 5 number 64 actually has something to say about him versus Bruce as investigators and who's better or whatever. But from a writing perspective, I think him being a detective and a good detective is really funny and a really interesting writing choice. It's how do you keep a guy like him grounded and interested in solving crimes as opposed to transcending into the Speed Force Dr. Manhattan,
Yeah. So in theory, a good detective. In practice,
yeah.
So
I love it.
Yeah, with enough time, I guess anyone could figure out anything.
Right? And if
maybe
time is effectively meaningless to you, he could go through every option in his head in a split second. It's just
right.
But he's not gonna do that. So he has to be, it's kind of like the preacher thing, the comic, where the character has the word of God. It's his power, but he has to be a flawed weirdo who forgets he has it, because otherwise it'd be no story,
So true.
That's my argument for Barry Allen.
You know what? I love it. I love that.
Was a good argument. We also would have accepted Tim Drake, but
probably
that was very good. No, I like this Barry.
I liked that. I do too.
Very different.
So what is your favorite corner of the DC universe? Is it titles or characters that mean a lot to you, that you grew up with or just really love?
Yeah, I came to DC mainly through Vertigo, which now is DC DC official, but so Grant Morrison and Rachel Pollack's Doom Patrol was really big for me. Alan Moore's that Swamp Thing, and I fucking love Don V and Mike Perkins' new Swamp Thing run. It's Sandman, Hellblazer, all of that stuff was really big. I loved the tone and ethos of Morrison's work specifically, and like I mean this lovingly, but like the critical theory word salad approach to writing was like all I was about in my 20s and late teens when I first kind of discovered him. And then like, of course Swamp Thing has the kind of interfacing with the natural world as opposed to human society. And it's all body horror, cosmic horror, monster movies, and all that jazz. So I loved it. And the public library where I was living just had like every Vertigo, everything for whatever reason. So I just ate all of that up and
Love it.
yeah. So and then, kind of got into it from there. It was fun how like you'd get a cameo of Batman in Swamp Thing. And, in Batman's book, he's like the biggest thing. But in Swamp Thing, he's just like the perspective. You're looking at this planetary perspective. And all of a sudden, like Batman's just doing something. And it made him look so small. And I thought that was interesting. Because, I'm like 30s and grew up in America. So like, I know who Batman is and have known who Batman is since like before I know who I was. So it's cool to kind of have that perspective on the character. And I mean, man, now like all the Poison Ivy stuff connecting her to the Green, like such a cool and smart reinterpretation. Like, oh gosh, yeah. So I guess that was my way in.
Yeah, I love that. Oh yeah. Do you like the Doom Patrol TV show? Out of curiosity.
Oh,
I admit I'm so bad at watching TV stuff. I don't have like I just kind of moved and I don't have like a watching anything medium. I've heard it's good and I want to watch it so bad because I love Doom Patrol so much.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so good. Oh my gosh, it'll be a good binge. Yeah.
I'm so excited.
So you like the really weird, really gay stuff is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You're our type of people. I can already tell.
So our next question for you is that, well, this is not a question, this is a statement. Your art style is incredible, obviously. Who or what were some of the influences on your art growing up, or even now, like artists or cartoons that you liked as a kid, maybe some comics or manga? What are your influences?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, like, thank you. That's super sweet to say. I'm glad you like it.
Your art's incredible.
Yeah, I love your style.
And like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's constantly evolving sort of journey of who I like. I always got like really gross in both senses of the word metaphors that like style is kind of like a bubblegum ball, like all this stuff you like, you just keep like putting stuff on. So like, I don't know, as a kid, it was all like Brett Blevins and Bill Sienkiewicz. Their art on New Mutants was like, they're kind of both ends of the spectrum, but like, oh my gosh, I thought they were so cool. And then like, also was reading Naoko Takeuchi's Sailor Moon and like Hagiomoto's A Prime and Clamps X. And so like all of those were like little kid foundation or like, up to middle school foundation. I just thought like, I drew at the time and all of those artists could pull like beauty and gesture and horror and drama and all this stuff just from like 8 lines with such facility under like quick deadlines. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. I want to be all of them. And just kind of like, read more, learned more about stuff. So everything just kind of, the bubblegum ball gets bigger. But
yes.
Charles Best, Yoshitoshi Abe, like Paul Pope, Jason, Haruko Ishikawa, Wendy Pini. I mean, like everyone. And like then illustrators and graphic designers like Milton Glaser and Maurice Binder, directors like David Lynch and Kunihiko Ikuhara, like just, because Carmike's is narrative art. So there's all the storytelling, the composition, the pacing. So a lot of film and even like narrative illustration stuff like NC Wyeth. Like how do you compose an image that is, has all this sort of like meaning and toss in it.
Oh,
yeah.
It's so fun talking to you about this, as I can tell you get as excited as we do about it. So.
Like, ooh, talking about art. Oh my God, my favorite.
Came to the right place.
You did.
Yeah,
so,
I really respect the work that you guys do, like having conversations with people about this stuff. Because like, I don't know, I was in a position in my last job to kind of hold these sort of like, I don't know, art inspiration meetings with people where I found that, like obviously I like to talk about it, but being able to hear other people's opinions and learn from them was this like, all of a sudden we're talking about like Jim Phillips or Todd McFarlane or like John Singer Sargent or people who I didn't like before that now I'm hearing some guy who loves their art. It's been like the biggest influence. Like now all of a sudden I'm like, well, that's cool. Look, I can see how what they're doing is really successful. And all of a sudden now I really like them, so it's cool that you guys put yourself in that position too.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you.
And see, I find people that I like already and then ask them to come on my show and talk to me. And usually I like them even more after the conversation. But no, you're totally right. Like some books we read and, you know, some we aren't fans of and some we are, but you got to keep an open mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to your art style just because I love it. Like, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. And like, I'm like, don't tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. When I look at it, I'm like, it's kind of gothic, like a little haunting, a little gritty. But like when you take like maybe it's because I'm looking at your horror work, but then when you take that and put it in like the DC comics, like in the short you had in Lazarus Planet, like
which I loved, by the way, so like, much.
I feel like obviously it keeps your same style, but it's not horror anymore. But like I love that it keeps like that grittiness. Like I don't know, I just love it so much.
Yeah, I pitched that to them as like, oh, sick, I'm gonna do like a horror story, and then I just wrote like a goofy ass thing.
It was so cute.
Like, this one's gonna be horror, I promise.
I love it so much. I mean, we have to talk about Circuit Breaker. I could talk about Circuit Breaker forever. So can you tell us a little bit about his conception, how he came to be? Were you given any notes from DC for what they were looking for with this character? And where did you get the idea for the background, like being a Flash costume actor, the powers, all of that? And please, if you would, talk about the top surgery scars on the costume, because I want to talk about that forever.
Please.
Yeah, I'm glad that hit right. That was so like the editorial team came to me with the idea of a Still Force hero. So that was kind of like, hey, we want first trans man character, and we're thinking Still Force. And Chris Rosa, as a Flash editor, was on that email chain from the get-go. You know, he's credited on Lazarus Planet on my story. So like they're like, this is what we're thinking, but pitch us whatever. And so I pitched them whatever, and we ended up agreeing back at the Still Force direction after a while, which I think is awesome. Like I love it. It's one of those, like I keep forgetting that wasn't my original idea for the character, because like I love where we ended up and like haven't really looked back, you know. And the Still Force is fun because like, you know, it's got a few stories, but there's so much room for further exploration. So to me, the whole thing felt like it could be additive, which is kind of more respectful. Because I think, you know, with a lot of like queer stuff, right? It's like, fit yourself into our tight mechanism.
Right.
You know? This was like, I really felt like I had the opportunity to kind of do something more interesting, like take this and then expand upon it, because like the Still Force just leaves a lot. There's a lot more stories to be told of it. So it kind of gave me a way to like, figure out how I wanted it to work. Because I think, you know, it's an absorbing power, absorbing energy. It's kind of framed like it's a bad thing. It's always like, oh, we're gonna take the life force or whatever. But like that can be really healing. And you know, the Speed Force, it's like, you know, the opposite of the Speed Force, right? But the Speed Force is constant energy, this constant life, growth, etc. But like you can't have infinite growth within a finite system, right? So many problems with like capitalistic exploitation are because of that. So like, well, the Speed Force isn't like good, because that kind of sucks, right?
Yeah.
So if like the Still Force is like towards stasis and death, you're like, yeah, but like, I don't know, things gotta change. So it was also kind of like, okay, I kind of like this concept more, and it's more open-ended. So it was kind of fun, you know, and I think too with like Jules specifically has the kind of like energy redirection stuff. And so, you know, that, well, like to me, it's kind of like, oh, you can pull stuff out, you can heal stuff, but like, I don't know, a future writer could turn him into a total bruiser, and that'd be really fun. Just like, I don't know, get powered up, punch stuff. Like I felt like there was some kind of open-endedness for what other people want to do with him in the future.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Oh, I love this character so much.
And the background stuff was, I mean, they kind of like, they came to me with this idea, and I was in the middle of doing Stuff of Nightmares, and like kind of exploded my life and took a job in a different state, and like had to move myself to this other state while drawing Stuff of Nightmares, and like DC contacts me. I'm like, well, I gotta say yes to this. And I was like, fuck, I have like no brain. So I was kind of, it ended up like, once the ideas They're throwing out a lot of ideas and kind of talking back and forth, but it really clicked when I decided to set him in Northern Nevada and do the kind of, small town historical reenactment stuff, because I think I just needed like space to process the move. I was moving from Northern Nevada, and one of my friends there says that his favorite museums in all the world that he's gone to are these like tiny, unassuming one-room small town museums that are just like run by some crusty old card. And I was like, I think I said, like, I get one of those like, oh man, this is probably a really embarrassing expose from like for any of my friends from Nevada who like read the story. They're like, oh God, Alan. But but not very many. But it's maybe different for other people. But it was just like, man, what's in a thinking about those small towns on like Highway 50 and the high desert, and there's always these throwaway stories about so-and-so superhero saving this small town that doesn't matter because we're focused on Metropolis or whatever. Right. But it's like, there's people who live there, man.
Yeah, they matter.
Those people.
That's so real.
Yeah. And now the top scar like markings, inspired by that on the costume, was that your idea?
It was. Yes. I mean, in general, I like to think, you kind of throw out your first idea and then like do a couple more drafts or whatever. But it was like, oh, Flash editor. Oh, you want this related to the Flash? It was like the first thing that came to my mind is like, okay, this is the costume.
Oh my God, I love it.
Sometimes your first idea is a good one.
It's such a good one. Yep, TJ can attest. I screenshotted it, immediately sent it to him, and he was like, I know, right?
That's
I love
so
that.
Sweet. I was really afraid because I know, the problem with being the first, right, is that like there's no one right way to be trans, and everyone has so many different experiences, and like as obvious by the story, I decided to go with like a real specific dude, and I could have done it kind of more. Here's a really general. I'm trying to cover all my bases, but like, what if I just make this character like the most specific guy? Because I felt like that would kind of help being like, you don't have to have top surgery to be a trans man at all. It's not a requirement, but this guy wanted it, so it's important to him. So I felt like the more sort of individuality I could give Jules, the more that would feel like something true to the character, but not like a mandate for transness in general. So I was really afraid. I was like really hoping that people would like it and not take it the wrong way, because it is until there are just more trans male characters and trans masculine characters and all that, like it's no one character is going to represent everyone's experience. Sure, it shouldn't have to.
Absolutely. We hope he's surrounded by many trans friends in the future, so
yes. And like I'm not trans, but the way I interpreted it was like it's taking those scars and making them empowering in a superhero type way. Like those scars can be empowering anyway, obviously, but like I love taking it and running with it with the superhero-ness of it all. I thought it was really, really brilliant.
Me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad you like it, because it's definitely the most fun part to draw. Well, maybe the tassels. Maybe the tassels.
Oh, the tassels are good too.
Well, so DC has had quite a few queer characters introduced and also established characters come out in recent years. Do any of these characters or coming out stand out to you? Did any of them maybe inspire your character Circuit Breaker behind the scenes or even in universe theoretically?
Yeah, so, not personally, no, but, again, I came to DC from Vertigo stuff and from Grant Morrison's work specifically. So, like Lord Fanny and Danny the Street were like some of my first like real DC characters, and like, and Rebus and, Coagula. So like there was a lot. And then Peter Milligan and Duncan Fegredo's Enigma, right? Incredible gay superhero story from like 93 or something, which, oh my God, the gorgeous new print edition. I'm so glad that came out because more people need to read that. But like, as picked and chose what I read of DC, and what I tended, as you said, to be more weird and queer.
Weird and gay.
I guess like, so the recent stuff, like with, other capes and those stories didn't impact me in the way they have obviously impacted readers who like love those DC properties. Like, so I think I'm not the audience for it, but like, man, my biggest complaint with Swamp Thing stuff is like, the heteronormativity it like keeps returning to, even it gets super cosmic, but then like, and there's gender within plant biology and stuff, but that's so structurally alien and weird. And I think there's a limit there writers have that's not a dimension explored much in those stories, but that was a stupid tangent. I guess.
No, I love it. You heard it here first. Make Swamp Thing gay.
Yeah. And you mentioned Danny the Street. I love Danny the
I know.
Street, and my only exposure to them is the Doom Patrol show. So
Oh
I'm
my-
like so excited for you to watch the Doom Patrol show.
I cannot wait. But like I don't really mean any of that to like diminish all that, because like DC's doing such good work, and I know it's also what it's really like. I might not be the audience for it, and that's fine, because what it's doing is bringing in so many new readers and so many younger readers into these stories, and like, man, that's awesome. And like I can't wait to see what stories that reader base will tell in comics in a few years. And like, obviously just outed myself as like, yeah, none of that was an inspiration for Circuit Breaker, but like I love the idea of like, was he inspired by some of these heroes coming out? And like, I'm not the guy to write that story, but like, man, I would love if someone who had that story to tell wrote the character and wrote that for him, because like that's such a cool experience and interesting at the in within the superhero universe.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So we know it's been announced you have a story in the upcoming Pride anthology this year. What teases can you give us for the story? No pressure, but any more so we can get.
Yeah, so I think in the what is officially announced is that it's a team up with Jess Chambers, Flash Earth 11, who I'm so excited. I've really got to know and love that character, researching, like reading every appearance a million times to prepare for writing this. And they're just an absolute delight, and like I think I kind of maybe remember when the character debuted and like was maybe embarrassing to admit, was being kind of cynical about it, like, oh cool, the new Flash character in there, like checks list, oh they're non-binary this time or whatever. But like hearing how much like the editorial team loves this character, and like the co-creator Ivan Cohen really loves this character, and like that was really heartening to me. And then reading them, I'm like, oh, they're this flirty little meddler, and like they're having a incredible command over the speed force by the time it's future state. Like this is a cool character who like needs a lot more stories, and like I'm excited I get to write one of those stories. And a fun contrast with Jules, who is more green. So a cool thing, like they're both kind of have this non-binary gender expression, which is a unique lens on the world. And they're both characters connected to kind of cosmic forces that further change the way they interface with the world. So that's pretty cool, and it was fun to get. So I don't interrupt.
Oh, you're fine. This is your interview. Go for it.
But yeah, just cool to I signed on for the 2 stories, so I knew I had 20 pages total to kind of like introduce and set up a foundation for Jules, and it was fun to get to explore that with Jess. I didn't know that the Pride was going to be as much of a team up until I was writing it. But that turned out to be super fun, and now that I've gotten to really love Jess, there's just so many more stories to plumb with both of them, and it'd be cool to be able to write one in the future. So that's about all I could say.
Oh, yay.
I can't wait for that team up. Was that your idea to pick Jess, or did editorial be like, hey, we want you to team up with Jess?
It was a suggestion from the editor, and I went with it because I didn't really have a better one. I mean, like, I introduced Jules with a friend, and so kind of my idea was like, oh cool, I'll like continue her story too. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, wait, like I gotta do a team up with another character. And then it was like, the more I read about Jess, I'm like, no, Jess is really cool. Like I gotta use this. And I'm sure that like I could have, if I had something else, I could have pitched it, but I didn't know who the rest of the the stories were or anything. So like I kind of trusted their judgment. And then again, the more I read of Jess, the more I was like, no, this is great. This was smart. Like I can this.
Yeah, it's hard to top Jess once. If you lead with Jess, like where do you go from there?
So true. So true.
So I think you were kind of touching on this already, but we were curious. Can we expect to see Circuit Breaker elsewhere in the near future, like beyond Pride Month?
I sure hope so, because I know that's the biggest heartbreak with new queer heroes is that like, oh, here's a cool person. Oh man, sure looking forward to seeing them maybe once a year, and that's such a disservice to fans and to the creators and everything. So I really hope so. I'm not, to be honest, unless I'm working on the book, I'm not sure I'll know.
Yeah.
which kind of makes me sad, but that's part of you create a toy and you put a toy back in the box and hope they play with it in an interesting way.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard about the JLQ?
No.
So there was a long story short, there was a Justice League Queer series that almost got made. It was in the round robin competition. And so all the time we talk about it lost, obviously, because it didn't happen, but it got a short story somewhere. And so Chris and I always are like, make the JLQ book, please.
Yes,
and anyway,
please.
Circuit Breaker would be amazing in that book, in that team.
Oh,
I would love to
agree.
see that.
Oh,
That'd be
yes.
fun. I mean, I've got a bunch of stories I'd love to tell. So I feel like there's potential for the character, and there's enough, for another writer to do. So I hope I can read something fun too.
Well, I hope it's you that gets to do it in the future.
Yeah, this is your character.
Yes.
Hashtag
For now.
DC.
I'll be
trademark
nice to whoever
DC.
takes the mantle.
Oh, yes. You love something, you have to let it go, right?
Yeah, it's the biggest, I mean, I've created and made my own self-published comics for so long, so it's kind of the biggest difference with working for DC is like, oh man, like I don't own this. There's something fun in that. It's the collaborative myth making, right? That these superhero comics are, and that's really cool. The fact that it's mediated by for-profit corporations makes it kind of suck, but at the same, it's like DC, anyway, but it's I'm gonna stay real positive, but it's both exciting and also kind of terrifying. It'll be my first time to not have that full control over something, and I hope I can do it with grace, because it's tough. You look at the kind of history of these comic creators who get to write a character for a long time, and some of them leave with grace and some of them don't, and I respect both ways as I get it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Well, just think, this was such a monumental character. He is going to be around literally forever until the universe implodes, because DC Comics will be here forever.
Yes.
And there's always going to be trans people, and someone's always going to want to bring back this character and be like, let's tell a new story.
Yeah, that's the hope, right?
Yeah. So yes, think positive.
Yes. Speaking of thinking positive, if one of the Bat family members was to come out as trans right now, who do you think it would ideally be?
So I've heard a lot of cases for Nightwing, and I think that's really fun, because the way I see it, Dick Grayson being a trans man wouldn't change anything about him or his stories other than the fact of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's an important trans narrative to have. It's just a normal dude, just as and Nightwing is maybe not the most toxic upholder of the patriarchy, right? But trans can be that, that's also an important trans dude story. It's sometimes we suck too, but I think a lot of love for Nightwing comes from him not being that guy. But with Dick Grayson specifically, he has become such an important part of the canon that coming out as queer wouldn't be a death knell for him. Anyone in the Bat family who's more obscure than him. So everyone besides Batman, right? It's if they come out as trans, you might only see them again once a year at Pride, But I think with him, he has the sticking around power that it would be additive to his character and not actually a death knell.
Yeah, he's here 24/7 and getting a Pride cover every year, so we may as well make him a part of the community.
Yeah, we love you, Nightwing.
Yes. we do always laugh about how there will always be a Pride cover of Nightwing, and we're always like, we see you.
I think he can be straight. Maybe he's just trans,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I was laughing when you were trans guys can be problematic too. So you're into horror, so I'm gonna go off topic real quick. Did you see Evil Dead Rise this past weekend?
Oh no, no, what did I miss?
Well, okay, well, there's a trans actor slash, maybe character in that movie.
Yes.
And he makes some bad choices.
He
And
is-
at one point, I lean over to Chris and I'm like, this movie just shows that, trans dudes are just as dumb as cis dudes sometimes.
in horror movies especially. Yeah, I think
Yes.
your exact comment was even trans dudes can fuck over the universe.
Yes, it was all his fault.
It was entirely his fault, but we loved him.
Anyway, I thought you may appreciate because you seem to be into horror, and I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we out here. And I respect. I mean, I love Evil Dead stuff. So
You gotta watch it. You gotta watch it.
check
Yes,
that out.
please.
I love idiot trans man rap too. So
Very important representation,
Yes.
yeah, and, obviously that was not. I tried to be a little different with Jules, and the non-binary aspect was my idea because again, I think like Western superhero comics are pretty like, what are they besides a study in masculinity already? So there's a bit of like, well, if he's just like a dude, we already have that story. So why would anyone else want to use this character ever besides the fact that he's trans? So like, but like, so like instead of just being super masked, it's like, so many stories about like dealing with masculinity and understanding masculinity from whatever angle. So like, trans, but like not super into the binary aspect of it. That's a perspective that is interesting and not told as much in comics. So that kind of gave me more like, okay, now I see a reason to, use this character as opposed to like whatever else. So, but dumb trans man rap, we need it too.
Yes.
Well, my next question.
I'm gonna make an inspirational poster that just says that.
Oh yes.
I'll buy a sticker. Let me know.
Okay.
My next question is just as off topic. So, during my research of you, I saw some of your Wiccan fan art and I screamed, I'm a huge Marvel Young Avengers fan. Love Wiccan, best twink around. So my question for you is, who's your favorite Young Avenger? I just need to know.
I mean, it is definitely Wiccan.
Okay. I felt like we were headed
last
there.
name is Kaplan. I am gay and a Jewish nerd.
Yes.
So like, I was like, oh, hello. Shit.
It's so horrible. He's one of my favorite comic characters. I totally forgot that his last name was Kaplan recently because of the WandaVision erasure.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I've heard about that.
yeah, so like his name isn't Kaplan very often anymore. So I love that. That's so funny.
Yeah, I didn't hear about him immediately because I was kind of out of Marvel comics, and I'm not an Avengers fan in general. So I was kind of out, but I was dating someone named Billy at the time, and I was like, wait a second.
Oh,
I can't handle. There's a Billy Kaplan, and they're a gay Jewish nerd, and like what? And so I'm a lifelong X-Men fan, and I've like never willingly read an Avengers comic that wasn't part of an annual or crossover. So like, I can really credit Wiccan for like giving me to care at all about the Scarlet Witch, especially during like the Decimation era. Oh my god.
Yes.
Fair.
No, hard agree. Like the Avengers are the cops of the Marvel universe. Love the X-Men. Young Avengers are like the high school kids who are rebelling. The gay kids.
Agreed. And speaking of the X-Men, like Gillen McKelvey got to tell a really good prodigy story in their Young Avengers arc. And like, I'm not going to degrade him by calling him an Avengers character because David Layne is an X-Men, but
right.
rules, and I'll take a good story from him like wherever it comes.
Fair.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, love him too. All right, that wraps up my off-topic portion of the interview.
Love an off-topic.
Thank you for indulging me.
TJ will be all up in someone's social media to be like, let me see the crumbs of Young Avengers.
Yeah. Literally anyone who has posted something about Young Avengers who comes on here, I'm like, all right, who's your favorite though?
I love it. Just don't troll through my old DeviantArt. Don't ask those questions.
Oh.
We might troll, but we will not ask questions. That's the solemn rule of DeviantArt.
Respect.
So what comics have you been enjoying in general? Can you give us any recommendations for our listeners?
Yeah, so I mean, it'd be a lie if I said I was doing anything in my free time other than watching Okeanos Explorer streams. But like, if we expand the time frame, I've really been loving the new gorgeous editions of Kazuo Umezu's Orochi that Viz has been putting out. So
Ooh,
loving that classic horror manga is like getting its day in English language publishing finally. Super
yeah.
stoked that Haruko Ichikawa's Land of the Lustrous is starting up again because like, man, best science fiction comic I've ever read. And yeah, just finished and Ranvi and Mike Perkins' Swamp Thing, which ruled. Super enjoying Teeny Howard's Betsy Braddock Captain Britain and all the
Yes.
Krakoa era X-Men stuff. Fucking
Yes.
rules. And like, and what else? Liv Suburbia is one of my favorite cartoonists, and like every new page she posts on Patreon like changes the trajectory of my day. And like
Aw.
CJ Dawkins' anti-capitalist queer epic City of Cards too, that comes out on
Ooh.
Patreon. Their work is so beyond. Lee Dean and Salvador Aguilera have a cool new comic debuting at TCAF that I can't wait for. Speaking of cool
Ooh.
trans man creators.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I mean, there's just so many incredible comics coming from like all directions right now. And now the Pride story is being wrapped. I'm excited to just read everything I can
Yes.
between Okeanos Explorer and Nautilus Dives, of course.
That's so fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah, those are so good. Amazing comics coming from everywhere, including you, of course. I'm just sucking up, so you'll come back at some point.
Is it
Um,
working? Is it working?
Is it working?
Yeah.
You mentioned Teeny Howard and her Marvel work. We just talked to Marcus Toe, who did her Excalibur run.
Yeah.
Oh my god, loved his art. Anyway, also could go on a tangent about that.
Oh my god.
But I'm gonna move on to the next question. So if you were able to tell your dream Batman or Bat family story, what would it look like? Like certain themes you would want to focus on, or any characters or relationships you'd want to like focus in on? And again, no pressure. You can give us some broad strokes so like no one steals your ideas.
Yo, keep the real ideas for the DC editors, but like,
Yes,
yeah,
please.
it's a fun one because like, you know, Batman so iconic and open that writers can just have a lot of fun with him, right? And so, you know, there's some of the, I guess the kind of the, and not true across the board, but generally the difference between like being an X-Men fan and reading DC stuff is so many DC characters are like the cape, not the person. And I think a lot of my favorite, maybe I'm a bit of a Gotham outsider because these are probably like the iconic, not big DC reader pools, but like my favorite Batman stuff is like the Long Halloween and like Batman
Yes.
and the Killing Joke and Arkham Asylum. You know, like the big like not in
Yes.
continuity stories because it's like you just give weird writers a chance to like go ham with it.
Yeah.
So I love those, and you know, they're maybe I kind of love them because like I don't really like punching, I don't really like guns or crime stuff and rich vigilante. It's like none of that's really my bag as a writer. So I think I like those because they're not what I would write. But I had pitched Circuit Breaker as a social worker in Arkham Asylum. I just remember it's like that was my pitch, and they were like, no, we got another story going on there in Lazarus Planet. So like maybe that's a little complicated. And so I think if I were writing in the Batman Gotham side of DC, I'd want to do something like a small story in Arkham. That'd be
Yeah.
Ooh, be
That
fun.
I love the idea of Circuit Breaker like trying to do good at Arkham. He'd be like the only one working there that is.
Yeah.
Be like, wow, everyone here seems to really hate everyone here.
Yeah, I don't remember how it went from there to like, oh, I dress up in Flash drag and like the man on Highway 50, but you know, again,
Hey,
I
you
haven't
know
really
what?
looked back, but
Hey, you can do that in Arkham Asylum too.
Yeah.
Someone has.
Life comes at you fast. I don't know what to tell you.
Was I hearing things, or did you use the words Gotham Outsider unironically?
It made me very happy.
you know, just trying to be a little funny, you know.
Oh, I love
You did
that.
good. You did
Loved
good.
it.
Speaking of a little funny, what is your DC Comics hill you will die on? Something silly or specific you have an intense opinion about? For example, famously, we've had people talk about whether or not Batman does or doesn't do that. Wink.
I just
Meow.
feel like so he's gotta because like what he's how like I just because I feel too bad for any of his female love interests he doesn't. But
I mean, I already feel bad for them because of all of that.
it's true. But there's got to be an upside. But So
that's the upside.
I mean, look over a lot of red flags for certain things. But so like for me, I think there's a bit of, maybe this is a bit of the Mandela effect, but like the Killer Croc story that stands out in my mind is in Azzarello and Russo's run. It's like the Noir stuff that has that kind of like Frank Miller vibe where it's so like heteromasculine that it kind of turns into drag. But anyway, there's like this purposeful joke where like Croc's getting a lap dance and Batman swoops in place of the stripper to interrogate Croc, and Croc's like, not what I was expecting, but like, what the hell, take it off. And so I love that, and obviously that stuck in my head, in my mind, as like the iconic Killer Croc moment. And in that, Riso draws Croc as like just a real ugly guy, and like not even as much of a caricature as he draws the Penguin. And like I swear, like Azzarello's captions are like, he just has a skin disease or something. So like, and I think I read this in the like noir black and white collection first. I think it's also in color and probably originally in color. But anyway, so my hill I die on is like, I never realized that Killer Croc's like actually a crocodile dude. Like I thought he was just like an ugly guy. So like, but like, yeah, in my mind, I'm like, no, he's just like a dude, right? Not like a scaly or whatever. So anyway,
that's so funny.
Scaly.
I'm dying there because I believe I am wrong.
I like that you were like, I know I'm wrong, but I will die for this.
I mean, I'm hearing your hill you will die on is Killer Croc's just ugly.
Look,
and I love that.
That he's ugly, but also bisexual, apparently. So.
Batman's got a nice ass, man. Like he's walking around in tights.
Look,
whatever.
He does a lot of training. I bet he can back it up and throw it down. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean, if Batman's gonna, dancing around a stripper pole, you're gonna tell him to stop? Like,
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We'll check out the show.
Something awakened in Killer Croc that day.
Maybe that's there's the Bat fan story I want to write.
Oh no, I'm into. It just becomes Killer Croc trying to like slowly woo Batman by setting up crimes to get him to come to the sewer.
Oh God, I'd do it.
He just at one point Batman like solves all the clues and gets to the end of the tunnel and it's just Croc with flowers that have died because they're in a sewer.
Trail of roses down the sewer.
Yes.
I think you're writing this right now.
I'm here. I'm here for it.
The pitch is ready.
Yes. Well, Alan, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so much fun. Where can our listeners find you on social media, and then any upcoming projects that we've talked about already or in addition to, please feel free to shout them out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Jules follow-up in DC Pride coming out in June, I believe. Woo! So check that out. DC fans of Killer Croc might be interested in something that is maybe not as fun as that story we were just talking about. I cannot promise that. But if you're also fans of mushrooms and swamps, I guess I haven't been announced on it, so I can't tell you exactly what it is, but doing some pages in an upcoming issue of something involving all of those things.
Is it, look out for that. Can I ask if it is Sporer?
I cannot tell you what it is.
Okay.
Because I believe I have not been in it. Like the book is
fair.
But my name's not on it. So
fair enough. I was just curious because mushroom horror is some of my favorite, and I love that it's called Sporer now. So
it is
Sporer.
Thank you, TJ.
But yeah, I post art and occasional plant photos on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram at ALK Comics. And now that I've kind of wrapped up these deadlines, I'll probably get back into doing some fun original queer sci-fi comics. So maybe another web comic, maybe not, maybe just pitching it, but follow me and find out.
Sounds amazing. Oh my God.
I will be following you and finding out. and I just downloaded Maw. I'm so excited to read that.
Oh, thank you. That was a fun one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was a blast.
Yeah, it was so great to get to talk to both of you. Thank you for reading and supporting cool, weird, queer comics. And...
Oh, please. That is our honor and our joy.
Yes, anytime.
Yeah, as weird queers ourselves. Thank you for listening to the Gotham Outsiders. You can find me, Chris, on Twitter at The Myth of Psyche, where I talk about feminism, psychology, and Batman, of course. But you can also find me on my new show at Thirsty Untoon over on the Talking Comics feed, where Bronwyn and I review webtoons and drink wine and also review romance novels. You can also find me writing reviews at talkingcomics.com, and I am now accepting consulting clients. So if you need someone to do sensitivity reading or consult on psychology or queer identity, I'm your person. You can also find my co-host TJ
at Troyfin2 on Twitter, where I talk about books, gay things, gay books, and all sorts of things, including Batman pretty often, way more than I used to. And I recently became an official librarian, so you can find all sorts of book reviews that I post just for fun, a lot of advanced reviews of books that haven't come out yet. So if you're looking for a nice gay read, please hit me up. You could also find me talking on other podcasts just here and there if you search my name on any podcast service provider that you listen to.
And you can find us both talking about Batman all the time at the Gotham Outsiders. So join us next time. Same bat time, same bat place.